it corruption. We're going to cut off your hand. We're warning you. This government of Pakistan is going to enforce Allah's law. We're going to cut off your hand. I think the U.S. Marines are going to land the next day. Huh? Because this is really deterrent punishment. From the time you declare that, you find so many people buying tickets for New York and for Miami, and the suitcases are being packed very quickly. Let's get out of this country quickly, because you cannot afford to have your hand cut off. This is Allah's law. And then once you start to enforce that law, that's it. You'll have a very clean and honest Pakistan. The market will be clean. So this is why when you have this monetary system operating, and you have this system of law operating, you're able to have an economy which is healthy and prosperous, and people can now work and get the fruit of their labor. Good. We have to turn to the subject of eschatology to understand the mysterious phenomenon of British and European wars of conquest, expanding their armies, taking over the rest of the world. And when they go, it's not just like a raider who goes to raid and then go back home. No, they've come to stay and to establish the government. And they then call it their colony. And it's called colonization. And when they colonize you, they have an objective far more than simply taking your money. They want to take your soul as well. Yes. They want to take your soul as well. I have great love for Dr. Muhammad Iqbal. Oh yes. I have great respect for him as an outstanding scholar. And I consider him to be one of my teachers. Oh yes. And when I offer a critical comment about Iqbal, I never do so with any hatred in my heart, vindictively to try to bring the man down. But if you make a mistake, I've got to say you made a mistake. And if the Pakistani people get annoyed with me for that, I don't care 2 peanuts for them. I don't care 2 peanuts for them. If they get annoyed because I offer a critical comment, is Iqbal your God? Is Jinnah your God? Yeah? They came not only to take your wealth, they came for more than that. They colonized you to take your soul. They colonized you to take you and transform you into a carbon copy of themselves. That's why they came. And one of the instruments that they use to take control of you so that they could transform you into carbon copies of themselves was to take gold and silver out of the market as money and to replace it with their bogus monetary system. And in all the whole world of colonies, the most important one of all was India. If you could succeed with India, it would be easy for the rest of the world to be absorbed. This is the biggest nut of all, India. In the world of Islam, Indian Muslim scholarship stood preeminently in the world. Indian Muslim scholarship. And all the rest of the world of Islam looked up to Indian Muslim scholarship. So if you could take Indian Muslim scholarship for a ride, it's going to be easy, plain sailing for the rest of the world of Islam. So all their guns were trained on India. When they brought their bogus money to India, there were some ulama who, with great wisdom and knowledge and integrity and courage, stood up and said, no, this is haram. But there were few. And today their names are forgotten. Nobody remembers them today. Who they were. I can't get their names. Who were those ulama who stood up with knowledge and wisdom and integrity and courage and declared that this money which is coming out of Britain is haram, and we must stay with our gold and silver coins? But there were few. And the establishment, the established scholars, the outstanding one, the one who are allamas, either assisted, accepted, offered fatwa, it's okay, or remain mysteriously silent, and yet remain allama. And up to this day, they are honored as allama. But they're like mouse, they never uttered a word about the bogus money. And those who had the courage are today forgotten. We don't even know where their graves are. And when India was conquered with money, and the British got the gold and silver out of the market, and all of India, Hindus and Muslims, all of them started using the paper money, it was easy sailing now for them to take over the rest of the world of Islam and the rest of the world. And so we who have come, my father told me our family came from Hyderabad, Deccan. But one uncle said, no, your father is wrong. Family came from Afghanistan and they moved to Hyderabad, Deccan. I don't know which one is correct. So we have a special place in history. Indian Muslims, a special place in history. That because of our failure, to use the most polite word I can find, because of our failure, the rest of the world was trapped. They came with paper as money, and they started it here in this island, the island of Britain. It was 1697, 96 perhaps, when the Bank of England was established. And the Bank of England started to issue what they called a promissory note. And quickly the bank found itself in hot waters because the promissory note were redeemable in gold. The British sterling pound was a gold coin. The promissory note meant that you could take it to the bank and get a gold coin. But the bank started issuing more paper than they had gold. And today they have a sophisticated name for this fraud. They call it fractional reserve banking. But it's fraud. You should be cut. Your hand should be cut off for this. But the bank survived. This was the initial process to see how the system works. And because the scholars never stood up to declare that this is fraud, the bank was eventually able to sell this new system of money to France and to the rest of Europe. A man named John Law was his name, an Englishman, John Law, went across to France, went to other European countries, and sold the idea. This is a nice way to become rich. All you have to do is to issue a note, which is redeemable in gold, and as they accept it, you print more paper than you have gold. You make money out of thin air. Easy way. And the governments and the kings and so on, the emperors and so on, bought the idea quickly. And then came 1944 with the Bretton Woods Accord in New York, upstate New York, where the victors of the Second World War got together And they decided we're going to establish an international monetary system now. And the international monetary system now, we said, yes, we'll issue the promissory notes, but only one will be redeemable in gold. Only one. And it's the US dollar. Because the United States wants to replace Britain. And Pax Britannica wants to Pax Americana wants to replace Pax Britannica as the ruling state in the world. So to rule the world, only this currency will be redeemable in gold, the US dollar. And all the rest of the world, including all these followers of Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, all of them, will have the value of their paper on the basis of the relationship with this paper, the US dollar. And Muhammad Ali Jinnah never studied this subject. He studied law at British University, but he didn't know anything about the subject of paper money. And so when Pakistan was born, of course you have to have the Bank of Pakistan, State Bank of Pakistan. At the State Bank of Pakistan, yes, you see the same paper. And I'm using the most polite language that I can. I can use more violent language. And then in doing this, you are accepting the United States of America as your Lord and Master. Yeah. One Pakistani leader was not too happy with this relationship of servitude to the United States. So he wrote a book, you may have heard about it. He says, friends, not masters. What was his name? Huh?
Ayub Khan.
That's right. Field Marshal Ayub Khan. Friends, not masters. If he had studied the Quran, then he would not put in the word friends, not masters. He would put in something else, neither friends nor masters. Because the Quran prohibits us from being friends of a certain people. If we were studying the Quran. But the sad news is we have betrayed the Quran and we're not even aware that we have betrayed the Quran, so we eat our biryani very comfortably and go home and sleep. In the Quran, Allah speaks and He says, to the angels to make sajda before Adam alayhi salam. Fasajadu, so they all made sajda except illa Iblis. So because we have something called a rational faculty, a capacity to think, and we know something about elementary logic, if the order was given to the angels and they all obeyed except one, the implication, logical implication would be that the one who did not obey had to be an angel. Full stop. Allah is not deficient in the use of language. No. He has constructed it in such a way so that if you use a schoolboy methodology, you'll come to this conclusion. He's teaching you a lesson in methodology, how to study the Quran. If you use the wrong methodology, you'll come to the conclusion that Iblis was an angel. You can't get away from that. But then when you turn to the other pages of the Quran, you find to your embarrassment now that the Quran says about angels, they don't have any capacity to disobey. وَيَفْعَلُونَ مَا يُؤْمَرُونَ. When Allah gives an order, an angel cannot disobey. Must obey. But he disobeyed. So now logic, he can't be an angel. And then elsewhere in the Quran, Allah now says, وَكَانَ مِنَ الْجِنِّ. So what Allah has done in this very simple and beautiful way is to teach, a methodology, how to study the Quran. Do not take a verse of the Quran in isolation. Study it. Full stop, I've done my work. Or do not take any part of a verse in isolation. Study it, and you come to your conclusion, full stop, you can go home and sleep. That is not the way to study the Quran. So now let's take this verse of the Quran that Ayub Khan probably never studied. And neither Iqbal. Regretfully so. I can't speak about Jinnah because Jinnah never pretended to be a scholar of Islam. No. All Jinnah did was, you have decided you want this kind of a state, and I'll deliver it to you. And that's what he did. That's it. He delivered to you what you chose. You wanted, he delivered to you. And he had the capacity to do it. So don't blame Jinnah. Blame Iqbal. This is in Surah Al-Ma'idah. And Allah is speaking about Jews and Christians, and about our relationship as Muslims with Jews and Christians. And he says, I'm giving you what the Arabic text says, don't take Jews and don't take Christians as your friends and allies. And then with wrong methodology, you put a full stop. لا تتخذوا اليهود والنصارى أولياء. Wrong methodology, you put a full stop. They are friends and allies of each other. Full stop. Wrong methodology. بعضهم أولياء بعض. And whosoever from amongst you turn to them for friendship and alliance, you belong to them. Full stop. Surely Allah does not provide guidance for a wicked people. Full stop. All of this together constitute one verse of the Quran with several sentences. Wrong punctuation. This statement that I just gave you is false. You are attributing a falsehood to the Quran. The Jews and Christians are friends and allies of each other is false. At the time when the Quran was revealed, Jews and Christians were not friends and allies of each other. Prior to the revelation of the Quran, Jews and Christians were never friends and allies of each other. And for more than 1,000 years after the revelation of the Quran, Jews and Christians were never friends and allies of each other. So to say that Jews and Christians are friends and allies of each other is monstrously false, blatantly false, transparently false. Even a schoolboy will say this is false. And this is what in your Quran. Something is wrong with the methodology employed for understanding this verse of the Quran. Yes. If you remove the punctuation, you get something else. If you study the verse as a whole rather than part by part, Allah could not be speaking about all Christians when he says, don't take the Christians as your friends and allies. Why? Because in that part of the Quran, he's saying that there will be a time to come when the people who will be closest in love and affection for you Muslims will be a Christian people. Yes, the same Quran is saying that. So it is clear he could not be speaking about all Christians. And therefore he could not be speaking about all Jews. Now we ask the question, well, which Jews is he talking about and which Christians? And when we ask this question, the answer comes immediately in the words which follow. بَعَدُهُمْ أَوْلِيَاءُ بَعْضٍ. Allah is saying that if that time were to come when Jews and Christians reconcile and become friends and allies of each other, then do not take such Jews and such Christians as your friends and allies, who themselves are friends and allies of each other. And whosoever turns to them with friendship and alliance to such an extent that one day you will bend your knee to get the highest national order and become Sir Muhammad Iqbal. You'll bend your knee that Jeremy Corbyn will not bend his knee. Yes, Jeremy Corbyn refuses to bend his knee before the Queen. But you will bend your knee because you have served Britain so well. Britain will not give you the knighthood for your service to the cause of Islam. Britain will give you a knighthood for your service to Britain. That's why Britain will give you a knighthood. Because you have served Britain. And Allah is saying, do not take such Jews and such Christians as your friends and allies, who themselves are friends and allies of each other. Will that day ever come? When part of the Christian world and part of the Jewish world will reconcile and form friendship and alliance? It started right here in Britain. The Zionist, Judeo-Christian Zionist, the Judeo-Christian Zionist alliance was built here. The foundations were built here in Britain. And eventually, when they were ready, they went to Basel. They went to Basel. And after they went to Basel, a couple of years later, they could issue the Balfour Declaration. Iqbal had no knowledge whatsoever of what Allah prohibited in the Quran. None. And I still consider him to be my teacher. I still honor him and respect him as a great scholar. Allah is speaking of precisely the Judeo-Christian Zionist alliance, which has taken control of modern Western civilization and which created this monetary system, which culminated in the Bretton Woods Accord and the creation of the International Monetary Fund. And Allah is telling us, don't do it. Don't join them. And all of us, hook, line, and sinker, everybody, including Maulana and Mufti and Sheikh and the whole works, all of us join them. What a pathetic ummah it is today. So you'll excuse me if sometimes my language is violent and not kind of courteous language you'd expect. But, yes?
So I just came in and straight away understood, as soon as you explained the monetary system, I straight away understood that you're right, what you're saying, in the way you're describing the current financial system. And I never knew that until you explained it within the last 5 minutes, and I grasped what you said. And
I'm only explaining where it came from.
Yeah, it just really, and I didn't know that. But as soon as you explained it, it was crystal clear. You're right. Okay, I understand the economy is built on a false currency, and it shouldn't be that way. It seems totally haram. But why not just create a new currency? Like, why don't we establish gold currency? Would that just not solve the problem, and we would have a normal?
Yes. Yeah. Why don't we simply bring back the dinar and dirham?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Why not?
I'll answer you why. Those who created this bogus monetary system created the International Monetary Fund. And the Articles of Agreement of the International Monetary Fund prohibit the use of gold as money. Once you are a member state of the IMF, and all the countries of the world are now member state of the IMF, you are prohibited from using gold as money. So what China is doing, in order to get around the prohibition of the IMF, because China wants to see the US dollar collapse, the petrodollar collapse, so China said, we'll bring the petro-yuan to demolish the petrodollar. So China is saying to Saudi Arabia, because China is now the biggest customer for Saudi Arabia, so the Saudis can't simply say no. We will buy your oil for you and pay you in yuan. And when we pay you in yuan, we are prepared to redeem the yuan for gold for you at the market rate. We'll buy the gold in the market and redeem. So China is in effect saying, we'll buy your oil for you and pay you in gold, which is a halal transaction. But China cannot do it directly this way, oil for gold. Why? Why? I just told you.
Sorry?
I just told you. Because it is prohibited by international law, their international law. That's the answer.
Okay.
Because the Articles of Agreement of the International Monetary Fund prohibit it. This is what the Quran has ordered us. And Iqbal never knew it. And he is the father, not Jinnah. He is the father of Pakistan. This was not his only failure. This was not his only failure. But this failure took place in Iqbal because of an inadequate study of the Quran. Okay? Yeah.
But for example, Bitcoin, that is on a grassroots level, they created it, the currency themselves, decentralized, and why can't it just be like, again, on a grassroots level, just re-establish gold as a currency? Like, if, for example,
Can we accept Bitcoins as halal money?
No, I'm not. I'm not saying Bitcoin is halal. I'm saying that it was the foundation. It was built by on a grassroots level, not on an international level. It was just built by me, someone like me, in a bedroom.
Individuals,
like
whose name you don't know,
Yeah, I don't know who.
Mysterious individuals, who are behind the parda.
Yeah, but if, for example, myself, if I was going out now, I could go and create a gold coin. I could go and mine some gold. Make
Yes,
a coin,
you can have at a micro level.
Yes, at a micro level.
You can have in South Hall at a micro level. Once it does not threaten their system, they will turn a blind eye to a few shops in South Hall willing to accept dinar or dirham to buy a sari or buy a kurta shalwar. It does not threaten their system. But the minute your use of gold and silver as money threatens their system, the police are going to come and seize your gold and silver. They'll find a reason to seize it, yes, and you'll be gone. Yeah. So now, what I've done is, I believe I've spoken long enough. What I've done is to take you to the Quran and to the Sunnah, and then take you briefly to modern monetary economics. And now finally, I've left out the eschatology because that's going to take more time now. They're now moving away from the US dollar. They want, the ones who constructed the system don't need the US dollar anymore. They have something better in store. So they have to cause the rather crash, they want to demolish the system. But it has to be demolished in such a way that it has a soft landing, not like 9/11. A soft landing. If you have a crash, then large numbers of white Americans are going to lose their wealth overnight, and they all have guns in America. So that's going to be very, very danger. You're going to have bloodshed and anarchy. And the American police and armed forces will not be able to contain that bloodshed. And Dajjal is sensible. He's not a fool. So he wants a soft landing for the US dollar. And he wants a landing for the US dollar in such a way that the Americans will blame themselves for their loss and not blame the government. So you come with bitcoins, for example. And someone sent me this lovely story to explain exactly how the system works. He says a businessman came to a town where there are lots of monkeys, and the monkeys were on sale at $2 each, and he offered to buy them for $10. What a foolish man. Everybody rushed to sell their monkeys for $10. When he bought them all, he says, I'm going to raise it now to 20. See, you can find more monkeys. And then he raised it to 100, so you can find more monkeys. I'm buying them all. Bought them all. When there were no more monkeys, he said, okay, I'm leaving. Go and search and search and search and search and search. I'm going to come back, and if you find any monkeys, I'll buy them for 1,000. And the man has kept his word so far. And then he left. And he left behind his assistant, who when the boss had left, he said, this man is not giving me anything. I deserve something. And I'm prepared to make a deal with you. I'm going to sell you all his monkeys at 700. And when he comes, you can get 1,000 for it. But I'm going to have to disappear because I'm taking his monkeys. So they all rushed to buy all the monkeys at 700 each, and then this fellow disappeared, and they're waiting for the businessman to come, and he never came. So they were left buying monkeys for 700, which were in the market for $2. And so the Americans will blame themselves that we were ripped off, we were foolish, rather than blame the government and take out guns and so on. This is what's going to happen with Bitcoin. It's like casino money. Can this money be halal? It has no intrinsic value. It is not a reliable store of value. No. It does not have value created by Allah. It's not halal money. And because it is used to rip off people, it's riba, it's haram. So why are they bringing the casino money? Is it simply to rip off people more? I said the first reason appears to me to be to bring about the demolition of the US dollar. And as a consequence, I've come to the conclusion that this is meant to also allow, to facilitate the demonetization of all paper money. So that the future, maybe a year, 2 years from now, would be a world of only a cashless world, a world of electronic money. And the ominous implications of that. When you study the Quran, you'll know that they have the jinn working with them. And these are not jinn who are Muslim, these are jinn who are shayateen. Go to Surah As-Sad and you'll see it there. This is eschatology. So the best supercomputer in the world can't match a jinn. When how many billion people are on the face of the earth today? And you have 1 billion accounts, because each individual has an account. Everything that you buy and sell is going to have an electronic trail. Everything. Even if you buy chicken tikka, it's there. So they'll have the capacity now to sweep all through the accounts, 1 billion of them, and see which ones are not buying alcohol, and put a red flag there. No alcohol. And then they have other checks to see what's your profile. And when they find a profile of someone who wants to be faithful to Islam, they'll then come for you to say, do you have children? Are you trying to avoid sending your children to a school where they'll be taught that a man can marry another man and get a marriage certificate? That you prefer to homeschool your children rather than to betray your children by sending them for that education? When they have your profile, and now it's easy for them, because everything is electronic, they will then find a reason, an excuse to send the police and seize your children and give your children to foster care, where they'll be taught in the school where a man can marry another man and get a marriage certificate. And at that time, of course, you come, Sheikh Imran, what can I do? What can I do? My answer at that time, please find another Maulana and leave me alone. Stop wasting. This is, I believe, this is perhaps one of the biggest dangers of the new monetary system coming, because it's not meant to function simply as money. It's meant to function for other things more sinister than money. Good then, I think we've had enough. MashaAllah, thank you. Very nice.